Welcome everybody to this World Satsanga, and again it's held in conjunction with Kevin Moore and The Moore Show, and I encourage you to look at his YouTube channel, The Kevin Moore Show. Lots of new material on there, all very good quality stuff. So today's lecture is about how to stay calm, and really how to stay calm in a crisis. And it seems that it's quite relevant in today's world where there's so many things happening at the same time that we tend to be going from one crisis to another, not just from a country-based perspective, but an individual-based perspective as well. So in terms of keeping calm, the best way to stay calm is to really detach oneself from the immediacy of the problem that we have and consider it to be something that isn't going to bother us in 100 years' time. Now, that may be difficult to consider when we've got to do something really quickly and it's really, really important. But the immediacy of the issue can overtake our ability to think straight and make rational and logical and intuitive decisions. And so the way to think straight, as I've just said, is to detach oneself. Think it's somebody else's problem. Think it's a routine thing that you have to do, but although it's routine, it might have its challenges. So give yourself basically 10 seconds to respond if somebody's asking you for a response to a question or something you should know. Maybe they catch you out and you're on your back foot, so to speak, so that you don't remember all of the information straight away. Just give yourself those 10 seconds. Also, give yourself time to breathe properly. It's very important that when we are challenged or when we need to respond robustly in a challenging situation, that we do breathe properly. Give yourself time. Now, I know that time doesn't exist and we use event space instead, but give yourself the space, so to speak, to be able to respond correctly. Sometimes it might be really relevant to close your eyes, sit still, remove yourself from the situation, and just be for a moment. And let your true energetic self, or your guide, or your helpers, sort of work with you and give you ideas, direction, intuition, answers to the things that you need to do to solve the problem, to solve the thing which is causing you to be uncalm. So just practice this for a moment. Just close your eyes and create that focus very, very gently on the location of the origin of the third eye, which is in between the eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. And just be for a moment. Now consider what you've got to work out, what you've got to do, what the challenge is, how you're going to do it, and take it in baby steps. Think of it as being of something that you've got to do, but it's something which is not emotionally attached to you. That's what detachment means. You're not emotionally attached to it. And really, this is how you receive information from your true energetic self or your higher self, your Godhead and your oversoul, or your guide and helpers. So giving yourself time to breathe. Take deep breaths, breathing through the nose, breathe out through the mouth. Just breathe in deeply through the nose and breathe out deeply through the mouth 3 or 4 times. That oxygenates the blood, which also gives extra oxygen to the brain and also creates the possibility of thinking straight as well. It invigorates the thought process. It gives energy to the middle oblongata, which is one of the connection points to the greater reality, your Godhead, your oversoul, your true energetic self. So being calm is about detachment. It's about giving yourself space giving yourself time. Considering what has to be done in small chunks. Write those chunks down, write those pieces of work you've got to do down. Write down which has to be done first, then second, then third, what can be done in parallel. Don't try to do it all at once. Don't think about the end product. Think about what you need to do at this particular point. Then when you finish that point, you move on to the next point, because you've got the tools to be able to move to the next part of the responsibility that you need to do, maybe rather urgently. Again, detach yourself from the end product. Just work on the steps, the baby steps in between. This is the way to do things. Don't try and do lots of things at once. Do it in a linear way. We're in an environment which is low frequency. We are not able to activate, or certainly most of us aren't, the ability to access higher thoughts, behaviors and actions as a function of being at a higher frequency. We are simply able to do things one at a time. So don't try to do the end product. Don't try to do lots of things at the same time. All it'll do is trip you up and you'll have to do them again. If you find that the situation that you're in is life-threatening, don't worry about the physical form. Your existence continues and has continued long before in previous form factors, not just on Earth, but in other planets. So when you can detach from the point of this might kill me, for example, you can then give yourself the space to think straight and then respond accordingly to the emergency. If you look at anybody who's survived a significantly difficult situation or led people through a significantly difficult situation, they've all been detached. You may think they've been rather robotic, but in essence, that's their way of moving through it. They remove the connection, the emotional connection with themselves and that which has to be done. And they deal with it as if it's just matter of fact or somebody else's problem that they're helping them with. So therefore, there is no attachment to it. So that's really the essence of how to stay calm. Giving yourself time, breathe, and detach from the immediacy and the emotion associated with what's causing the anxiety, okay, or the concern, the fear. Just stay calm. Well, hopefully that's made some sense to you all. Just try it. Think of something that is really concerning you, that you're not calm about, that you're a little bit panicky about, and go through the process. Stop, close the eyes, give yourself time, give yourself space. See what the steps are, write the logical steps down, write down the order of those steps, and detach from it emotionally. You're not being aloof, you're just being sensible. So now it's time for the questions and answers. Well, welcome to you all for this August Satsanga. So I've got some questions I want to put through first, but for some strange reason, it's not letting me cut and paste the questions. So I'm going to have to read them out and I'll cut and paste them into the chat later. So the first one is from Nicole. And first one is, are brand new souls who incarnate onto the earth plane for the first time or elsewhere in the universe common? How do they navigate this incarnation without any subconscious frame of reference of what it's like to be in a body? Are many of these children now being born? How many of them are on the spectrum with one foot in the non-physical and one here? What is that? What a hybrid soul is? For example, my granddaughter is here to fulfill a desired experience of two different souls. It seems very challenging that at 3 years old, it's proving to be difficult because she's of a high vibration. She was, as you said, this is me, in a reading, stunned to be here, and she doesn't want to talk. Is that because she's used to telepathy? Is this the case with many children now being born? We're seeing a boom of kids with development delays because they are new. No, I mean, this particular instance, that child is basically a higher frequency individual and has taken on board a lot of work, and has, like many individuals who are probably in their middle 40s now, should we say, coming with too much enthusiasm, if that's possible, and now is starting to realize how difficult it is here. They're not new souls. It's just that they have decided to take on board a lot of work, and they suddenly realize, or suddenly remember, how hard it is to be here with this. Basically it's like working, it's like swimming through treacle, and having nobody listen to you and nobody help to hear you, and nobody able to communicate with you. So it's quite daunting being here. But in terms of new souls, the only new souls I'm aware of are those individuals who are classified as being the backfill people. They're souls who are not human souls, not the same quality of sentience or the same evolutionary level, and then they're not the same quality of sentience or evolutionary level to animals. They're in between the two, and they're the ones who have come here and have basically incarnated with individualized free will for the first time, and they get sucked into the low frequency thoughts, behaviors, and actions very easily, because it is easy to think negatively and work negatively and be negative. It's much easier to be that than it is to be of high frequency. So most of these new souls are basically those souls that are backfill people. Those other souls that have come to the earth maybe for the first time will have done lots of other incarnations in other areas within the physical universe, but maybe have been close to the level of free will while still being in a collective that we currently have now. So they will have much more to say experience in being in a low frequency environment, even though it might be classified as being a collective based environment. So in effect, most of the kids that we see who end up going down the negative role, basically they're the backfill people. The other kids who are hybrids of the different genres of like crystal, indigo, and rainbow children, for example, those bodies that are capable of coping with different types of energies, higher frequency energies, and the different fluctuations in energies that can happen around the world, are basically those who've come in with lots of enthusiasm, may have been coached to not be so enthusiastic by their guides, or not to take on so much, and they're now realizing that they've taken on a lot of work. But they don't fail. It's just that they basically have to start to realize that what they wanted to do is probably not possible, so they have to work on what they can do. Next question: when we sleep, do we reconvene in non-physical with our guides and helpers? Do we take part in other activities or ventures or learnings that have nothing to do with our current incarnations? What kind of things do we do? Well, basically, when we sleep, the body is still connected to the gross physical, and that's where the silver cord comes in. That's the continuous connection between the incarnate aspect or soul, and the gross physical, and it has to stay there. Without the silver cord, or two silver cords, there are, in effect, no reason for the soul to be connected to the body, and the body can demise. So we tend to stay close to the frequencies associated with our incarnation, maybe the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, nowhere, or even slightly above, but not out of the physical universe. It's only when we start to work in ourselves while we're here, we become much higher frequency, that we can have the potential to project our consciousness beyond the frequencies associated with the physical universe. But by and large, people who are incarnate and immersed in their incarnation tend to stay around the earth frequencies. Okay. Next question: I am aware that when we have free will, that can affect our life plan, but there are certain big events that are set in stone ahead of time that are so important that assuring that that they occur is on a must-do list for our guide and helpers, such as the soul wanting to experience cancer, or meeting a certain lifetime partner, or being funneled into a specific career, etc. Or even the main events subject to change based upon free will. Exactly how much free will do we have? Well, effectively, the life plan is a series of goals or series of desires to experience certain things within our incarnation. How we experience those things is up to us. That's the free will side, and we don't always experience everything, or we experience part of something, or a percentage of something. So even these supposedly big goalposts that we could potentially be identified as being big goalposts, like meeting our lifetime partner, like becoming a great leader, or somebody influential, or somebody whose life apparently does a nosedive and they become destitute, is not a guaranteed thing. And how we achieve those different goals is up to us. We may achieve destitution for a small period of time, for example, or we may experience it for the rest of our lives. We may experience our life partner who is our perfect life partner, or who is supposed to, just for a few months, for example, or a few years, but not for the whole lifetime. So in essence, the way in which we experience things is really up to us, but the fact that we do want to experience them is part of the life plan itself. And that's the most important thing to recognize, that what we experience is up to us, how we experience is up to us, as long as we do experience it. And that's the main thing. Okay. Last question, then we've got 3 more questions from somebody else. What purpose does joy or being in nature have in our evolutionary gain? I'm not necessarily in service to others when I'm experiencing joy or working in nature. I could be walking alone in the forest or joking around some friends with no purpose in sight to make the world a better place. But in these moments, I feel everything feels right and lighter. So it may be that I feel better, a long-term decision to detach from humanity and live away from it all will minimize our contact with others seems counter to the purpose here, which I thought was to help others. But as that becomes more difficult, the joy of doing so diminishes. How do we reconcile the two? What does pursuing or expecting or wanting joy even matter right now in the world, which is such a big mess? Experiencing joy is an essential part of being here, as is experiencing the difficulties. So if we're experiencing joy, we're detaching ourselves from the immediacy of the environment around us. We're detaching ourselves from being concerned, anxious, worried, depressed. And so we're enjoying the environment. And that brings us, that elevates our frequencies. So in essence, experiencing joy is a function of high frequency. And when we're in communion with Source or God, and anybody who's experienced Samadhi will tell you this, you experience joy because you're experiencing communion. Now, one of the things that was commented on this last question here about walking alone in the forest, you're in communion with nature, or joking around with friends, you're in communion with friends. Everything surrounds being in communion. So we all have this desire to be loved by somebody, to be loved by a group, or needed by a group. And all of this comes under the heading of communion, because in essence, when we're in the energetic, we are in communion. We're in communion with those other entities that are still projected from their true energetic selves. We could be in communion with our true energetic self. But in essence, we need to be in communion with Source, because we are in essence all individualized units of Source, smaller volumes, you want to call it that, of sentience that is Source. So we're only really happy when we're in communion with other volumes of that sentience. So that's when we feel joy. And also don't forget that the environment is also a part of Source. So when we're enjoying that environment, and we are in effect wanting to be part of it, then we can understand that we're in communion with Source still. So irrespective of whether it's the environment, individuals, or other aspects of what's going on around us, we are in effect in communion. And when we're in communion, we're experiencing joy. And that's the most important thing to remember. And that's why joy is quite important, because it expresses, it's a physical expression of our being in communion. Okay, good questions. Next one's from Faith. There's three from Faith. Do you see famine or shortage of food around November 2022? I expressed that there would be potential riots some months ago as a function of these food shortages surrounding the conflicts we've got between the Ukraine and Russia, and the prices of things going up. So there will be a what you call it, a self-imposed self-imposed famine or shortage. I think famine must be a culmination of famine and shortage together. I think I've invented a new word there. So I see the potential for it being self-imposed, but based upon financial constraints. For instance, last week I was in my local supermarket, and a loaf of bread was £1.20. Previously, a few weeks before, it was 85 pence. Now it's £1.80. So in effect, we're seeing things grow quite significantly in terms of the price of things, and so famine will end up being, if you want to understand that, a self-imposed thing. Okay, because we'll need to provide warmth for ourselves, but it could be good for us because some of us are a bit overweight anyway. We hear about the changes coming in November 2022. Could I elaborate on what they are? Right, I'm not going to answer the question, and the reason why I'm not going to answer the question is because it gives us direction. Whereas what we should be doing is working on it individually and not trying to preconceive what's going to happen. We should work in the now and deal with the now, and not try to work with what a potential event space could be. Because if we think about, oh, there's going to be a World War III, for example, that's question 3, then the energy surrounding this potential becomes stronger. And so therefore those parties or bodies or authorities that would like to see this happen start to gain energetic momentum. And so we add to it. So the thing to do is to not believe any conspiracy theories, not work with them, not discuss them. Just consider yourself to be a high frequency individual and work on staying high frequency and not trying to work on what potentially could be as a negative function. For instance, famine is quite a negative thing. Changes that could affect us negatively in terms of our ability to function is a negative thing. Additional conflicts could be a negative thing as well. And the other thing is that, you know, a world war doesn't necessarily mean conflict. It could be constraints around the world in terms of communication constraints, production constraints, purchasing and distribution constraints could all contribute towards a similar effect that a conflict-based constraint could give. So we have to think of things as being not in the same way as what we would expect them to be, and that's because in effect we would not be allowed to damage the earth in the way that we potentially could have done 60 or 70 years ago with the birth of the atomic age. So in essence, we're being guided to allow us to work our problems out, but those problems might mean that we need to experience certain levels of hardship, but those hardships are based upon our choices. And right now, everything is in a complete potential. There's no one particular route that we can go down. It's all in potential. And it's best to stay that. And the way to stay it is to consider that we're working in the now and doing the best we can do in the now. And that's the way to make sure that we're high frequency as well. Okay. And thanks for those 3 questions from Faith. Right, let's go back to right at the start. And I don't know if we're going to manage to get all these questions in. Okay, we've answered some of the questions out, which appear to have come in. I don't know how. I don't think I cut and paste them in there, although the cut and paste function didn't seem to be working a moment ago. Anyway, let's look at Ulla's question. The Origin said there's something to be cherished about linear perspective, not knowing everything concurrently. Can you expand on that? Yes, in effect, if you are above a maze and you can see the way into the center of the maze and the way out of the center of the maze, and then you memorize it, and then you get down to the maze and you do exactly that. What have you learned? You've learned that you can memorize the map of a maze and you come out. You've not learned the sorrow, the expectation, the excitation, and the concern or the worry about not getting to the center and therefore not getting out either. So we've not learned how to navigate the maze. We've just learned how to look at a map and go through it and come back again. We've not experienced the maze properly. We've not experienced the height of the hedges or the walls. We've not experienced other individuals also that are also lost. We've not experienced going down the same routes that we've gone down before. We've not experienced going in a way that we think is right but is actually wrong, or that which is wrong with us is actually right. So we're not experiencing things properly. So linear experience is actually beneficial because it's giving us the chance to experience things without precognition, without the benefit of being at a higher frequency where everything is happening concurrently. So in that way, we're experiencing depth and detail rather than broadness of what's there. Okay. Next question is origin expanding its sentience spherically or amorphously in more than one directional or level within its known area, known volume actually? Isn't it faster to explore things in a multi-level fashion, vertically, horizontally, and in every which way? The answer to that is yes. And interestingly enough, that's what's coming out of this book I'm working on right now, which is called Beyond the Origin, where I'm starting to understand that the origin has already expanded because I'm being allowed to get access to different event spaces. And it's very difficult to do this, by the way. It's on the cusp of me not being able to understand the information. And so they're bringing it down to my level, or the origin, or various origins, that is, because I'm experiencing different levels of origin depending upon the different event space, really depending upon its expansion of its volume of sentience. It's expanding in ways that it needs to be waited upon until the next book comes out, which is probably about 18 months to 2 years' time. But in essence, it's creating a condition where it's using triangulation of a direct sense and of an volumetric sense, but it's also spreading its sentience around, not by losing the quality of sentience, but by losing the volume of sentience. Quality doesn't disappear, volume does, but it still allows it to be there. Okay. So it's more information to come there. I'm sorry I'm being a bit elusive, but it's going to give the game away in the next book. So Julia, what does white children mean? Well, basically, white children is something that I discovered probably in 2014, actually, where I discovered there's a lady in China who had a child who was here specifically to help mankind. And she herself, as the mother, was extremely high frequency. And I was surprised at this. And then I found out that the child could be classified as a white child, not indigo or rainbow or crystal, but just something that's just pure. And white is a pure color. But although it's a mixture of every other color, isn't it, basically? And they are the individuals who are going to take us out into the next phase of our evolutionary progression. So there's 4 white children. They're all going to be equally spaced around the Earth. They're not all going to be on the Earth at the same time, but they're going to have basically 3 major roles. 4 of them are going to be quantitative leaders, 4 of them are going to be qualitative leaders, and 4 of them are going to be in the background. They're just going to influence things without actually being visible. And they're the leaders who are going to really affect what we do. A quantitative leader, for example, is somebody who's got 1 or 2 students. A qualitative leader is somebody who's got 1 or 2 students. A quantitative leader is somebody who's got lots of students, like Paramahansa Yogananda or Jesus or the Buddha. Somebody who works in the background could be classified as being the person 2 or 3 steps down from the president, who's really ruling the country, or in the Hindu texts of their leadership, maybe Babaji in the background. So there we go. Right, next one. How much of the Eden story is metaphorical, and what are the metaphors trying to describe about human nature and the genesis of mankind? Were Adam and Eve real people who ate forbidden fruit, or does this event represent mankind's connection to higher consciousness being radically reduced, thereby being veiled from paradise. In effect, it's a metaphoric term for the decision that we had when we started to use incarnation in the on the earth plane with individualized free will, and the choices that we made. We could have been under the control of source, or we could have had individualized free will, where we had total individualized free will. We chose totally individualized free will, and look where it's got us. If we had chose to be part of source still, not specifically controlled by source, maybe that's the wrong word, we would have been much higher up the frequencies that we are now, because we'd have been still in the collective. So it's all about, also a little bit like being the prodigal son or the prodigal daughter, where we choose to do things based upon what we think is freedom, or actually losing a little bit of your freedom gives you more freedom. Think about that term. Losing a little bit of freedom gives you more freedom. And that's what the choice was with Adam and Eve. That's the metaphorical or the mythological storyline associated with it.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Okay. So what we've got here. Again from Julia, in all of the parallel worlds of us, do the other versions of us have the same attention, or to say focus on concentration on the one that as the one we have chosen? Yeah, in parallel conditions, they are focused on what they're doing. For example, if we are on a bus or a train and we get off that train and we turn left or rather than right, then part of us goes right. So we have two versions of ourselves because we have different interactions there. We have different interactions with other passengers, different interactions with other people in the city, different interactions with other people we meet towards the car park, or maybe we don't meet them, for example. And so we have different versions, and it becomes more and more fractalized as we have more and more decisions. And so they are totally focused on, those parts of us are totally focused on slightly different or majorly different versions of what they're experiencing based upon the fractalization of choices that are occurring downstream. So, and that basically gives us the potential to experience, or should I say, our true energetic selves, the potential to experience multiple things concurrently, multiple variations upon the same things concurrently. And so it's really important that we recognize that they're not doing any better than us, and we're not doing any better than them, because they are us and we are them. It's just a different expansion. It's like making the choice to go to the cinema. Oh, I'm not going to go to the cinema tonight because it's raining. Oh, it's raining. It doesn't matter. The cinema's indoors. I'll go to the cinema. Yeah. So one of you stays indoors. One of you goes to the cinema. That's the choice. So in effect, you've experienced both being indoors and missing the cinema and going to the cinema. So holistically, we experience everything concurrently. It's just that it's not always what we think is the dominant part of us, because those other parts of us also think they're the dominant part of us. So that's the way to think about it. It's like parallel processing, but on a completely different level. Okay, another one from Eliza. In the curators, you talked about entities who create planets. Can you tell us more about the process that went into creating the Earth? And also, does the Earth have a TESS? And if so, where is it located? The Earth doesn't have a TESS, although it does have a level of sentience, because everything has a level of sentience if it's part of the physical universe. And that's not just the gross physical, that's all of the aspects associated with every frequency within the physical universe. Planets are simply bodies of low frequency energy. So if you think about our human body, that's a collection of low frequency energy, which is sort of attracted together to allow us to have a vehicle for us to experience things. And within that, there is an association with sentience, the soul, or the aspect. And that allows the soul or the aspect to experience the environment by moving around it and integrating with it and interacting with it in the way it's best experienced, by having resistance or associated with that level of frequency. And so the planets have a level of sentience associated with them in terms of being of service to those other entities that are in their evolutionary cycle and need something to work with. They need an environment to allow them to experience, learn, and evolve with. And so basically they are created in essence as a function of the work of the curators and our desire for those bodies of energy, those low frequency bodies of energy, or areas of local density, as I sometimes call them, to be maintained in existence. Because unless we desire them to be still there, they will disappear. So collectively, we want the planets to exist, we want the Earth to exist, we want our house to exist, we want our mode of transport to exist, and everybody else does as well. So that's why the Earth exists still, that's why the planets exist still. But if you think about it, when you go on holiday, your focus is not on where you normally live, the house you live, the suburb you live in, the city that your suburb's in, the country your city's in, okay? Or the landmass that your country's in. You're somewhere else. So your focus is away from that. So from your perspective, in your reality, your home doesn't exist anymore. But because there's other individuals in the same location, desire it to exist because it's part of their reality, it does exist. So if we all decided to go on holiday and move away from our location, then in essence and in reality, that those houses in that suburb wouldn't exist anymore because there'd be nobody else to perpetuate it. So that's the way to think about it. Is everything exists because we desire it to exist, even if it's subconsciously or in the background. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So again, Julia, will China and America open fire on the Taiwanese issue? No, there's lots of concern about North Korea, China, Russia, even down to South America. You know, there's all sorts of things going on right now. But all of these things are designed to alert us, those who are higher frequency, and even those who are slightly lower frequency, to the point where we're not being mature enough. We have a single environment that we have to maintain, and we have to work with ourselves. We have to work with each other. We have to become one unit, one level of, one civilization, basically, one incarnate civilization on one location. And so we're not going to see these things, although there might be minor skirmishes, but there's not going to be anything that is going to create a war. And so the next part is, what will the relationship be between the European countries and America like in the future? Again, at some point, we're going to become one. There's still going to be a level of, shall we say, friction or this disagreement. But when we get to the point of potential destruction, not that we will do, but we can see a path where it could go that way. There's going to be a collective thought process that starts to realize that we need to mature. Now, in the past, we haven't done that, and that's why there's other civilizations that have risen above us technologically and energetically, and some of them have ascended, and some of them have moved away. And some parts of the Atlantean race moved off the planet, and some stayed, and some let it completely destroy itself. But at some point, there's going to be a condition where we start to move away from this, and it's not going to be in our lifetimes, but it will happen. And we're going to get very, very close to being in trouble. Okay, thank you for that. Andy, I don't get why souls are lining up to reincarnate here on Earth. I get that they're coming here with free will. Souls accrue a large amount of evolutionary content here in a very short period of time. But where souls exist, time does not. So why should time play a role in their decision making? Why not steer clear of this mess and take the millions of years route to gain evolutionary content, since time isn't even a thing anyway? That's a great question. And the answer is that when you're in the energetic, we don't see things in a human way. We see things in a completely different way. And so we recognize that, in essence, evolution needs to be gained, not specifically as fast as possible, but as much depth as possible, and in a way which is going to be wholesome. And being here with individualized free will
creates the possibility of extremely wholesome and in-depth evolutionary content, because our experience here is difficult. Our experience here is for example, is for want of a better word, unique in any part of the physical universe, in any frequency. So being here is like an honor. You know, it's like being able to climb a mountain like Everest and being one of those unique souls that's achieved that. And that's why that's why souls are lining up to come here, because it's not only is it from their perspective exciting to be able to be here, but the potential to accrue significant evolutionary content above and beyond that which would take millions of years just doesn't come into it. The years don't exist clearly, but the event space does. But why not do things hard and gain depth of experience rather than do things easy and not understand it? It's one thing being told about an experience, it's something else actually experiencing it yourself. Yeah, we read lots of stories about people who've been in stressful situations, and we think, oh, okay, fine, it's a story. But what about the people who are actually experiencing it? They were experiencing the depth and detail of it. We weren't. So we shrug it off. The only way to experience things properly is to be here and experience it. And that's why we do it. And that gives us significant evolutionary progression. Okay. Daniel's asked about whether we can hear from source. We might not have time for that. Let's just see what's going on with the questions, because there's a lot of questions here. Let's ask more questions. Less questions about fortune telling and potential wars, more about metaphysics and how to live better. Good stuff. What's the greatest bit of information you can share with us that will carry us through to our next meeting? Any surprises? Basically, forget everything that's happening around you in the news and concentrate on being of service to everyone else around you and yourself. But be of service when it's required, not because you want to push it onto people, and see what happens. Smile at people. Say good morning to people, good afternoon to people. Open doors for people. That makes a big difference in people's lives. Yeah. Don't worry about somebody cutting you up on the motorway or the freeway. Let them in. Yeah. Don't get angry when it's expected to be angry. Accept that you might be wrong, even if you're not. Do anything you can do to squash the possibility of a negative thought process and watch what happens. And that is the key to creating a high frequency incarnate civilization. Reject the negative route, always take the positive route. That's the best communication I can tell you from source. Is that do the right thing. Don't get down the easy route of doing the wrong thing. Right, next question. We've got chance. We've got 4 minutes. Why do humans have the sense of I where most other animals do not? Is it because the sentience required to incarnate into a human vehicle is higher than those of other animals, or is it simply because our brains have evolved to the capacity of for self-consciousness? Well, the brain isn't what we are. The brain is just an interface, basically. What we are is in the soul seat behind the heart area, where the sentience sits. Animals are a different quality of sentience, different evolutionary level, not because of their choice or they're slower in evolution, because most of them were created in that way, where the quality of sentience wasn't spread out evenly by source. But we have a sense of I only because we're here on our own, because our communicative bandwidth has been reduced significantly because of the lower frequencies. Now we tend to refer to ourselves as the I, because we've now started to relate to ourselves to the body, which is I, and because we can't communicate collectively, we start to communicate individually. That's why there's a whole lecture could be had on this, basically. But in effect, what we need to understand is that we are normally in a collective. We're experiencing individuality here, only as a function of lower frequency existence, low, significantly reduced bandwidth. It's a bit like trying to communicate with two baked bean cans with a piece of string between each other. I don't know if you've done that at school. And using that communication medium to communicate with a supercomputer, which can access all the internet and get all the answers to all the questions in one. That's what we normally are. And where we are right now is the two baked bean cans with with a piece of string between them. And that's why we have this feeling of being individual, because we don't have the ability to communicate with whom what we are, because of the low frequencies. Okay. Next question. Is the life plan predetermined, and is it possible to obtain moksha or any other spiritual ascension which goes outside the life plan? We can take more than the life plan. We can do the life plan and finish it, and then have lots of years still to do more spiritual work. And apparently the age of 42 is where we're supposed to have finished our physical stuff, and we can work in our spirituality. So so yes, we can move beyond the life plan. We can experience all of the life plan and finish it, and then move on. Okay, rest of this. There are stories in Hindu mythology where a king will incur karma doing work and will do things to subdue karma by enjoying sexual company. Is sexual gratification formed out of a karmic link in normal cases? As long as we are using sex for procreation and in a loving way, we don't accrue karma. If it's addictive, it's karmic, because it's a low frequency condition. So anything that is addictive is basically karmic. Okay. I wish I could answer that question longer, actually, but that's the essence of it. Anything that's addictive, it creates a karma. It creates a link with the physical. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for this excellent questions, and namaste to you all. And I look forward to the next time, which is going to be October, because I'm out of the country for a lot of September and October. So the next one is going to be towards the end of October. So I look forward to seeing you in October. Namaste to you all, and much love to you all.
Welcome to the meditation side of this World Satsanga. And what I want to do now is to actually add on to the lecture, which is how to be calm, or how to be calm in a crisis, by giving you a meditation on beingness. Okay, and beingness is really just about being still, and just being, or just detaching from the physical form, and allowing yourself to just not think, not feel, not taste, not touch, not see, not hear. Okay. So just sit in your chair or on the ground, but whichever way you do it, make sure your back is straight, upright, your neck is straight, your eyes are closed, and focus gently on the origin of the spiritual or third eye. If you're sitting in a chair, make sure your feet are flat on the ground. And if you're sitting cross-legged or on a chair, make sure your hands are palm upright and placed on the junction of the upper part of the legs and the lower part of the body. And just sit here and be. It's very difficult to sit and be, because most of us have the monkey mind, the chatter, the list of things we've got to do, the people we've got to speak to, the work we've got to do, the jobs we have to do, the shopping, the washing, making the meals for the family, the person we said we speak to or said we do something for that we didn't. All these things come into our mind. They're all used by the ego to stop us from meditating, so that we stay lower frequency. As we stay lower frequency, the ego maintains control. The ego, of course, is our temporary personality, created as a function of being almost totally cut off, but not quite, when we come down in lower frequencies, and stops us raising our frequencies so that we can become more connected with who and what we are, our true energetic self, and therefore create a wider bandwidth, a communicative bandwidth that allows us to communicate and commune with the greater reality and our true energetic self, source, etc., and therefore become higher frequency. So just sit here, eyes closed, and think nothing. Just focus on this area that you can see in your closed eye vision, which is probably a mixture of colours, or black and red, or black, red and white, or however you see things when your eyes are closed. And focus on that. Focus on seeing that. Focus on being this background environment that's created through your eyes, trying to see through the inside of your eyelids. But whatever you do, forget everything else. Just focus on this location with your eyes, and then focus on breathing in and out naturally, not forced. To calm you down, slow you down, create this state of beingness, which is an essential part of staying calm. That's why we're doing this meditation now, because beingness is also linked in with staying calm, or being able to be calm in a crisis. When you are focused on the origin of the spiritual or third eye, and focused on your breathing, you detach yourself from visual stimuli. You detach yourself from smelling. You detach yourself from hearing. You detach yourself from feeling. Notice how your senses start to detach from you. Feeling goes. Smelling goes. Sense of smell goes. Sight obviously goes because you've closed your eyes. Taste goes. The very last thing to go is hearing. Check yourself every now and then. If you find yourself wandering, thinking of something, just remind yourself that you're supposed to be just being. If you wish, think of yourself sunbathing, just lying in the sun, soaking up the cosmic rays, energizing your body. I don't know about you, all of you out there, but when I'm sunbathing, I don't do anything. My brain just switches off. I just enter a state of beingness. And again, beingness is a fundamental aspect of staying calm, being calm all the time, and definitely being calm in crisis conditions. Now for the next few minutes, just focus on the origin of the third eye and your breathing and nothing else. And you'll notice that you don't hear anything. You don't hear any noises in the room. You don't hear any noises outside. You don't smell anything. You don't taste anything. You don't feel anything. Just concentrate on the breathing and the spiritual center, your third eye. Notice that everything starts to fade away. No feeling, no sense of smell, no sense of taste, definitely no sight, and the hearing goes as well. We'll just do this for a few minutes, just to give you the feeling of beingness. Okay, so slowly come back into the room. Slowly open your eyes. Take a drink of water if you can to help ground you. And you should feel that state of beingness put you into a state of calmness as well. So beingness and calmness are linked together. And certainly if you do this beingness meditation as a prelude to or assisting your need to be calm by detaching from the situation that you're in, allowing you to do it in a a way which is not emotionally attached, then you'll be able to remain calm in any crisis. So for now, I'll say goodbye. Thank you very much. Namaste, and sources love to you all.